So honestly, we could just hop right into this. And my thought on this was that we were going to lead off with the Pistons, but we've talked about the Pistons so much over the last month.
We'll have plenty of time after they lose to the Celtics tomorrow, or they beat the Celtics tomorrow night. So to snap the streak, that'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to happen. Sam loves to have a historically good regular season basketball team that he acts like can lose to the worst team in NBA history because
I've been conditioned.
Reasons.
I've been conditioned.
Reasons.
Yeah, I've been conditioned. I'm just going to say that. They need to prove to me that they're actually good. So
there is a so. I see Piss in the comments saying, this is also how you sounded. Okay, do you want to know the difference? The Sixers played the Pistons twice. They played them back-to-back 2 times. And the difference is that when you play a team 2 times, you can walk through one of those games, especially if it's a bad team. If you're just randomly playing them, as we've learned from these last few games, is that people are really getting up for the Pistons because they don't want to be the team that loses. And the Nets just played the Pistons twice. And in the second game, even though they're a better team, they still almost lost. And I understand the Sixers and the Celtics are way better than the Nets. But my reasoning was more so that they played them back-to-back games. It was home and away, that they could slip up in one of the games or rest their guys in one of the games and lose that game. In a one-off game, when we're now talking about history, the Celtics are not losing. And honestly, they're probably going to end up resting a few guys, and it probably still won't even matter because it seems like the Pistons cannot beat literally anyone in the NBA for the entire season outside of the first 3 games when they almost went 3-0 to start the year. It's actually very similar to the first year of the Sixers process. They started that year 3-0, and then later in the season, they lost 26 games in a row. So let's get into some other stuff that I want to talk about, which was the other things that I had lined up. And I want to start up top. First off, if you haven't already signed up for the Patreon, sign up for the Patreon. You can watch the streams with us live on playback, blah, 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 all that bullshit. Links are in the description for that stuff. You get extra episodes and all that fun stuff. But I want to talk about Dejounte Murray because he's someone that we've talked about a little bit on the podcast when we did our draft episode for the players that are most likely to be traded at the deadline. But now we have some actual firm slop, some rumors that have come out over the past few days about Dejounte Murray, including, the Lakers. I was
gonna say this is real rigid slop. This is this might be our first really firm slop of that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but every other slop we've gotten has been like, oh, this guy's not available. You know what I'm saying? Like you know.
Or this team wants that guy to be available.
Right, exactly. This is our first actual, okay, there's actual slop here. Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting because the Murray move was this regime's move? Are they successfully blaming this on Schlenk? How are they spinning this to their owners? It's pretty interesting. We usually see this.
When Schlenk first got fired from the Hawks, there was that leak, and I don't know if it came from him or if it came from someone in the organization, that Schlenk was very against the Dejounte Murray trade because he thought they were giving up too much. And he didn't like the fit with Trae Young. And it does feel like this was the new regime, but also it kind of reminds me of the 2019-2020 Sixers, and honestly, the Pistons, what's happening with them right now, where I feel like there are a lot of chefs in the kitchen. And I feel like because of that, you probably have different ideologies, different ideas pulling and swaying. You have the owner's son is involved, as we've talked about a lot. Nick Ressler, who's the son of Tony Ressler. You have Landry Fields, who's currently in charge, but you also might just have a bunch of different ideas and people pulling and pushing. And my guess is what's happening here is Quinn Snyder was hired after the trade. And my guess is that he also has some say. Part of the reason why he took the job was because he would have some say over the roster. And my guess is that he's just like, look at the on-offs, watch the games. These two don't fit together. I know we gave up a bunch to get this guy, including our unprotected picks / swaps in the 2025 draft, the 2026 draft, and the 2027 draft. But we have our pick this year. We can maybe take a step back to take a step forward when we don't have our picks, and we need to find guys that fit better with Trae Young, because my guess is that his pitch was basically, he doesn't fit with Trae. Why are we trying to force something that clearly doesn't work? And right now it's a lot easier to trade him before his extension kicks in and he makes $30 million a year. And either that becomes an undesirable contract, or it just becomes a harder contract to match. And with this new CBA, it's going to be a harder contract to trade. So they probably figured, let's get out ahead of it. Let's move off it, recoup some value while we still can, get a better fit with Trae, and see if we can get some of the younger guys that are on the roster some more run, and kind of try to fix things on the fly with Trae so that we can save ourselves before we have to give up all of our draft picks.
I mean, I think that's definitely it, and I bet you're right that Quinn Snyder is the X factor, because I'm like wondering that this is not usually teams don't make this kind of changing boats midstream direction. They usually ride or die with their decisions that they've made. So I that's why I'd been kind of thinking Trae Young was going to be the one to go this whole time, because he was the inherited point guard, and the new regime has a lot more stake in the Dejounte Murray thing. I think it's the right decision to move on from Dejounte Murray, especially before his contract extension kicks in, and he's going to be not a lot harder to move, but definitely harder to move than he is right now. So especially when something I had forgotten about, you have the John Collins TPE, which is huge, which can really help you kind of do some interesting things. Just
I forgot about that too. Is that, like $20 million?
$23 million. So it's like, that's a pretty sizable thing. And those contracts like match up, because one of the reasons I thought about this was because I just did the obvious trade, which is just D'Angelo Russell for Dejounte Murray straight up. That money works as a trade. And then what's the Lakers pick? Like,
so you get one pick. Okay. Yeah. So it's D'Angelo Russell for Dejounte Murray and a pick.
Yeah.
Also, Dan in the comments said Sam has never forgotten a TPE in his life.
This is the first time I've ever. Well, and they can do the fucking the Ponzi scheme, because you refresh it when you trade Dejounte Murray. Like, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna get back the 19.8 or whatever it is.
Right. You could just take D'Lo into that trade exception, and then you could just in perpetuity, create a larger trade exception.
Yeah, and you can and this is the tax ducking maneuver that the broke ass Celtics did for for a while.
The Hawks are going to be in the tax next year with this new Dejounte trade contract kicking in. So to get a guy like D'Angelo Russell, oh my God, Trae and D'Angelo Russell would be just a paradise of hoopers in Atlanta. It would be absolutely terrible to if a Hawks fan perspective, the lack of defense and just, I mean, it's basically just a worse version of what you have right now.
Yeah.
with D'Lo will shoot more, but sometimes that's not the best thing in the world. But long story short here, I would imagine that is what the Lakers are offering. The Lakers are saying, we'll take on DeJounte's contract. We'll give you we'll protect the pick that we have for all these years out. We're not giving you Austin Reeves. We're not giving you any sort of interesting prospects on our team. We're just going to give you a contract that matches and a heavily protected pick, and we'll take a flyer on Dejounte Murray. Having said that, I just don't think Dejounte fits with the Lakers. This is literally the same exact thing that you did with Russell Westbrook a few years ago. Now, Dejounte's a better mid-range shooter, sure. Dejounte is a little bit longer. He has better tools. He's younger, obviously. But if you want to talk about a guy who's going to soak up a lot of on-ball possessions, who's going to not shoot off the catch, and if he does shoot off the catch, the results have been kind of all over the place. A lot of people are pointing to the fact that he's shooting 35% off the catch this year. A week ago, we were shooting 31% off the catch. We're still at the point of the season where a good week of shooting can make your percentage jump by 5% if you don't take a ton of catch and shoot threes. He takes 3 a game, which, look, you could say, well, he'll get more with LeBron. He's playing with Trae Young. Like, Trae is one of the best playmakers in the NBA, and generates a ton of wide open threes for his teammates, even if he has other flaws in his game. So I don't really buy that the fit is great. I've said time and time again, I think Dejounte is one of the more overrated defenders in the NBA. I think that his rep is much higher than the reality of his game. I think that because when he was young, he was a role player who focused on those things, and he does have good tools and he generates steals and blah, 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 that he can get a little bit overhyped on that. And I think he's a slight negative or neutral defender at best. Maybe in a new environment where he has better defenders around him, it will look better. But I hate the fit for the Lakers, and I don't understand why you're going back to this formula that we know doesn't work. Like, we know the questionable shooter who's a ball handler that doesn't work as a connective piece never works with LeBron and AD.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you why though, because they have to make a move. Like, so at some point, that's the reason the Lakers show up in all of these trades, is because they're the team on the clock where they have LeBron James, and LeBron James kind of runs that organization. You know, like if LeBron tells you to go get Dejounte Murray, you're going to go get Dejounte Murray. You know, will it be good for the Lakers? No, I totally agree with your analysis. I don't think he fits in any way, shape, or form. But I think it is a relatively realistic trade, just in terms of the Lakers don't care about the future at all, and that's the primary negative with trading for Dejounte Murray. Is his contract is long, and it's not as expensive as I thought it was. It's like $25
million. It's a fine contract. I mean, it's a fine contract if you're worried about taking on money. I just don't like the money for the player. But most people think higher of Dejounte than I do.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. That's what makes this so hard, is because I was trying to like look at trades, and I think you and I feel pretty similarly about Dejounte Murray, and that he's not very good. So it's like very hard for me to like project what other front offices are gonna like think of a player like that. Like if I were the Hawks, my first call, they will not be say yes, would be to the Brooklyn Nets and asking what Cam Johnson for Dejounte, like straight up.
They wouldn't do it.
And they wouldn't do it. You know, I wouldn't do that if I were the Nets, you know, but I also wonder, you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
D-Bronx, who's a Nets fan, is commenting, where does Dejounte fit is the question. Like, what honest question. It is one of the more perplexing things to me. If your goal is to win a playoff series, where does Dejounte Murray fit? Because that's something that I've wondered for 2 or 3 years now, when he was on the trade block last time, when the Sixers were rumored for him in the Ben Simmons thing. I think that it's even hard for me because it's like he's having a career year as a shooter on pull-up attempts and catch and shoots, and he's still below league average true shooting efficiency. Yeah. Like it's
tough.
And some of that is he's had poor rim finishing to start the year, and I don't think that's going to be the case throughout the entire year. But some of that is also the fact that he is the player that he is. Now, if I really tried to like reimagine what Dejounte would be in like a perfect situation, it's hard for me to get there, but the only equivalent I can think of a player who was, to be clear, was better at role player tasks than Dejounte, but was in a situation where he didn't really look like a quote unquote winning player. He was someone who kind of was a raw athletic guy who had some basketball skill, but didn't really, on his current like context, didn't really fit with what they needed. And that was Aaron Gordon on the Orlando Magic, who goes to a perfect situation with Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, and he gets, you know, completely elevated. Now, could Aaron Gordon or could Dejounte Murray even become that kind of player? I'm a little bit of a skeptic on that, because I don't think that even if the quality of looks go up for him, that the efficiency is going to skyrocket. As a secondary ball handler and playmaker, it's something he would have to buy into, and I'm not sure he wants to. Like, I think that he probably views himself as an all-star level player because he's made an all-star team before, and he would rather do what he's doing in Atlanta, or maybe if he went to Chicago or a team that's trying to fight for a play-in spot, a play-in berth, he would prefer to do that Toronto, wherever, as opposed to being the third option on a team like the Sixers or the Lakers or something like that.
I think, again, I think that for that reason, the Raptors were the other team I kind of came up with. I'm looking for these teams that kind of lack, I traditionally lacked high usage guys, but then I keep forgetting Toronto. Scotty Barnes is good now. So they don't really have that problem anymore that the Raptors had forever, where they didn't have like a true number one option. You know what I'm saying? Like Scotty's not like hyper great at like everything, but he's doing a pretty fucking good job for a third year player. And there's no reason to kind of fuck that up. Like, even if you're Masai who loves fucking long players and you're looking at Dejounte Murray's 6'10" wingspan on a 6'5" guy, I could see him like being, but the Raptors do have a lot of guys that fit in that price range. You have Pirtle, Gary Trent,
Siakam, who they've been interested in if you want to go and add to the trade.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways, but yeah, I think that, it's funny. The teams that could use a guy like Dejounte Murray are like the Spurs, or like these other bad teams, like the Wizards. People in the comments have seen people say the Hornets. Those teams they're bad. Could use Dejounte Murray because they don't have a better like primary. I don't even really want to say creator with Dejounte Murray. It's kind of like just a guy who cooks,
Well, that's something that people have asked me. They were like, if the Sixers were interested, would you be able to talk yourself into it? Because they know that I just don't like Dejounte in general as a player. Mm-hmm. But the way that I said, like the way that I would cope with it if they really were interested, because the thing that really scares me, the fact that he is available, is the Sixers keep saying they want an extra ball handler and they want two-way players. And I'm like, shit. that kind of fits the idea of what Dejounte is. It's like he can handle the ball, he can create his own shot, he can, he can at least score from the mid-range against a set defense. I just think that when you're trying to build around Joel Embiid, it is such a hard needle to thread if you get a guy who is a heavy mid-range guy. Yeah. And you would prefer to have your second and third best players be proficient three-point shooters and guys who can really defend point of attack. Dejounte's had some success doing that, and he's also struggled. Especially this year, he's had some games where he's really struggled as a point of attack defender. And the reason why I say that is because on the other end of the court, you're running a drop defense, and anyone you want them to be able to navigate and get over screens. You want them to be able to contest three-point shots from behind and force guys into the mid-range so that Joel has a better shot at contesting them. And I just don't really think Dejounte's skill set fits that at all. I the more that I think about it, the more I don't like that fit. I never have. But the way that I would sell myself on it is like when you get to the playoffs and the defense takes everything away. The defense takes all of your actions. The two-man game with Maxey and Embiid, when they figure out all your plays, you need a guy who can literally just go get a bucket. Dejounte will be able to do that for you. I definitely think that fit with Tobias is especially clunky, but Dejounte is someone who can, against a set defense in the playoffs, as we saw sometimes during the Celtics series last year, he can get you a bucket, and he can at least, against a set defense, get his own, and that itself does have value. It's just how does he fit with other stars? And there are just so few guys that he really does fit with. Like, he doesn't seem like a Warriors guy to me. I know there's someone that they're going to be looking for extra shot creation, but like kind of with like Pods playing the way that he has recently for them and everything kind of flowing, Clay finally starting to hit shots, I really don't see that being a reality of what they want to do. So I still struggle. The other team that was mentioned with Dejounte was the Knicks, and I'm like, I can't. I think that's a worse fit than the Lakers.
That's really gross. Yeah. Like that's bad. Like because he doesn't do. Like who are you giving up for him? You know what I'm saying? Like like. As much as we like shit on Barrett, at least Barrett isn't like terribly high usage. You know what I'm saying? Like he at least like lets your other guys cook. And
exactly.
Randall, for as bad as Randall can be, he does go through these phases of like being like a literal All NBA player, which like Dejounte's never done. So, like,
I'm laughing at the comments from a Knicks fan that says, "I will kill myself in front of Dejounte Murray if he gets traded to the Knicks, changing the course of his life forever."
Can I tell you the answer to this? By the way, the team that I think could
don't say it.
Shape Dejounte Murray into something usable. I'm just saying, Duncan Robinson and he are like an exact contract match.
No, I think that's a horrible fit too. Think about the problem with Dejounte is that he fits with no stars because every star in the NBA wants to cook in the mid range, and that's Dejounte's best skill. It's like, even if I think about like the rosiest, most like high upside version of what Dejounte could be on the Sixers, the reason that I would want him is because, like I said, you can dump the ball to him and he can go get a bucket. He can run some secondary side actions. He can when Embiid's off the court, him and Maxey can probably work well off of each other because Maxey is someone that needs someone to generate more open threes for him. He's only shooting 3. He's the best catch and shoot player in the NBA this year, Tyrese Maxey. And he only shoots 3 a game because there's just not enough guys to create open shots for him. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at, I just realized what the shot chart team is, because I was like, okay, well, then we need a team that's exclusively at the rim or shooting.
It's 3. Just the Celtics.
Well, okay, it is the Celtics, but it's also the Milwaukee Bucks, which would be very funny and gross.
Yeah, like, I don't.
You imagine that. Imagine that backcourt, like the Dame Dejounte Murray backcourt, like an even worse fit than the Trae.
I was gonna say he doesn't fit with Giannis because he can't. Like it's it's just so it's so difficult for me to imagine a situation where Dejounte fits on a good team that wants to contend. If there are mid-tier playoff teams and lower-tier teams that are fighting to get into the play-in, sure, he might be able to fit himself into a situation. I just I always have a hard time with these guys who are not willing shooters off the catch. And if they are willing shooters, they're not hyper efficient ones. And like I said, the rosiest version of Dejounte in my mind is on a team where he's the second guy or like the situation where he was with the Spurs a few years ago, where they were not good, but he had the ball a ton. And I don't see a team. Like it's hard for me to really picture it, which is why I think if the Lakers or Knicks are interested, the Hawks should definitely try to, because it's only going to get harder to trade him from this point out.
Well, so that would be the thing, right? Is that you're betting, can he like turn it around? You know what I'm saying? Because I do think that there is like enough of a, he is so toolsy. You know what I'm saying? Like I do think that like he's one of those guys where it's like really tantalizing. Where if like you could get him to play, if you could get buy-in from him to play a certain way, I could see him becoming like value, because he's not, you know, he's never been like a good shooter. So far, this has been his best 3-point shooting year ever, where he's 37% on 6 attempts a game. And that's like playing with, like, again, as we've said, playing with Trae Young. You know what I'm saying? It's probably not going to get too much better than that. Do you want to guess how I'm just going to say it. I'm looking at him and Duncan Robinson, like straight up, that's like a pretty fair trade just in terms of like VORP. And that's pretty alarming, because I think those are two guys who are like very different. Like if you asked you
the perception of player, the perception of the player versus the reality of the player. Yeah. Right. And that's always been my thing with Dejounte, is that I think that I can never figure out a good team that he fits on because of the fact that he has all of these things. But then he's not an offensive engine either. Honestly, I kind of think that what Babyface Jay is saying in the comments is the best one I can think of so far. I think Utah would probably be the best fit for him. And now they were interested in Drew Holiday. Drew is a better player than Dejounte, but I think that if you're interested in a theoretical defensive guard, even though Drew's actually good on defense and Dejounte is theoretically good on defense, and you're looking for a pseudo lead guard that can, you know, at least run some offense, Dejounte with that spacing and that system, anytime I look at guys that are in Utah or in Boston, it just feels like a little bit of a cheat code to me for their offensive stats. Like they always get a little boost. Probably the Pacers would be another team where that's the case now, just because the spacing is so into all those teams play bigs who can shoot a lot. And they shoot a ton of threes and they give their guys a lot of space to operate. That might be a situation where Dejounte can actually be really effective. And honestly, it's a move that wouldn't shock me if Danny Ainge were like, let's get this guy and then try to do what we did with John Collins, but hopefully we're successful this time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, you've got guys, the thing is, like, you've got to at least send out one of John Collins or Colin Sexton in the trade.
Yeah.
Right. And like
Kelly Olynyk. Celtics interested in Kelly Olynyk, make it a 3-teamer.
I mean, I would love that, but I just don't understand why.
Well, I guess that
if you're not sending those guys out, like, why?
Also defeats the purpose of what I just said, because they wouldn't have a spacing big anymore.
Right. So like, I don't know. I honestly don't really see the Jazz fit, just because like they already have all of these guys who cook. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you want? And you've got Keontae George coming off the bench, who's like gonna be he's like the heir apparent. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't fuck that up. So like, why would you trade for it? I don't know, man. Like I feel like we get ourselves into this all the time where we end up talking about these guards who aren't like one of like the 3 best guards in the league. Yeah. And we're like, yeah, on a championship team, they're probably like best suited to being a 6-man on the bench. You know, it's just kind of what it is. If you're not Derek White or like a player like that, who's like an ultra role player, if you're a high usage guy who like can't shoot, like, you just don't really have a role on like a good team. Like,
but when we talk about guys that are actual all-stars like Trae Young, not every team cares about winning a championship, and you can, like, Trae's going to give you a top 5 offense wherever, or top 10 offense or whatever, wherever he goes. Mm-hmm. And that is where Dejounte is a hard guy to see fit, because he doesn't do a lot of the things that normally a second or third guy does. And also he doesn't give you a good offense at all. It's not like, it's not one of those situations where it's like, okay, he's easily like a portable player from team to team. And someone like Trae isn't either, but Trae at least gives you a baseline level of competency that if your goal is to make it to the playoffs, Trae's going to help you get there. And that's not something that Dejounte can do for a lot of teams. You know, I mean, look, maybe there's a team that's willing to take a flyer on him. I don't even think they're going to get like an Austin Reeves back. I think it's going to be mainly like, if the Sixers were interested, I think the Sixers would say, we'll take the contract off your hands. Here's some expiring contracts and some maybe our shitty first that we got in the Harden trade. But I don't think it's going to be like equivalent value back that they gave up for the guy in the first place.
And that's what's tough, is you're not recouping value. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like you're hurting your team. You know, like you're really just clearing space, which I honestly is probably worth it in the short term, because that your team would be better. But like, it's going to need to be something like Fox himself, where you're taking back like another bad contract, but it's just a guy who can shoot better and doesn't mind like, you know, hurting as much. And it's got to be a guy who's kind of on his way out the door in terms of like his career. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be a guy with upside, you know?
He suggested Hayward for, and you would even have to add contracts to that if you're Atlanta, because Hayward makes like $30 million. So, the one last Dejounte trade I want to talk about, and this is a challenge trade house.
Let's go.
Levine for Dejounte, and you would have to add in like DeAndre Hunter too, I believe.
Yeah. Honestly, he stinks too. So like, if I were running the Hawks, I would be like, yeah,
absolutely. Sure. Why not?
Yeah. Like that, I would do that if I were the Hawks. I'm like, not kidding.
Okay. So you're getting you're sending, and then you're getting back Levine. I would consider it, because I just don't think DeAndre Hunter is ever going to be worth that contract. But at the same time, it's a hard sell. And maybe the fans just don't care, but it is a hard sell to the fans to be like, okay, so we got rid of in the last 6 months, we have salary dumped 3 guys on the team, and we've taken on Zach LaVine, who no one in the NBA wanted this contract. But in reality, like, I mean, if your goal is to save money, that's not a real trade. If your goal is to try to still remain competitive, at least Zach shoots threes. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to look at the positives there. Like, I don't see Dejounte's fit with, especially if they keep DeMar and Caruso. I don't see his fit at all on the Bulls. Once again, it's the same thing. We already saw Dejounte and DeMar together on the Spurs, and they were mid. They were the 10 seed, but maybe that's what the Bulls want. Like that's a situation where I don't know. I think once again, you're having too many cooks in the kitchen and it's too much. And I see someone saying the Murray for CJ McCollum challenge trade. How is Dejounte going to work on a team with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson? You can't build a team around 3 guys that love to live inside the paint. Like, that's just the reality of the modern NBA.
Yeah, that's like the main problem with the Hawks is they just don't have enough shooting, and then the guys that you would want to like trade to move on to like you can't trade Bogdanovich because he is like the pillar holding up your shooting is like him and Jalen Johnson.
Well, you can trade him to the Sixers if you would like, because I would like that very much.
Okay. But then it's like the other guys you're left with are guys like Dejounte Murray, and like I don't know. I keep seeing everyone talking about fucking Clint Capela like as like a trade chip.
And I have him written down here.
Okay, like where? Who's trading for Clint Capela? Tell me the team, because
I have a list. Because we tried to figure this out all day. Did you see my tweet about this?
No, I didn't. No.
It's so funny you say this because it's exactly what I said. I tried to do this exercise earlier today, and I tweeted and I said, you want a fun exercise? Find a single team that would give up real value for Clint Capela. He's still pretty good, but no teams need a starting center. And the ones who might probably wouldn't be willing to give up the contracts, picks, or prospects to make a trade work. And so these were the teams that after that tweet that I thought were reasonable. Mm-hmm. The Knicks, because Mitchell Robinson's out for the rest of the year. And if they really want to compete, they have the Evan Fournier expiring contract and a bunch of Mickey first round picks that they can send out that probably aren't going to be first. And even if they are first, they're like the 17th pick in the draft or something at best. Yeah. So the Knicks, the other team was the Grizzlies, which I actually, because Steven Adams is out for this year, he has 1 year left on his deal. Yeah. And the trade that someone proposed to me was a protected first, that's a few years out, a protected first, Steven Adams and Zaire Williams, who has not really worked out, but you just take a flyer on Zaire. Steven Adams makes the money work. If he can be healthy next year, then great, he can play for you. If not, whatever, he's just to make the money work. And you really just want the first round pick for Clint Capela back. And Clint on the Grizz is very interesting to me on just from a team fit perspective. And I guess he would be interesting on the Knicks too, but that would only be for this year. And then what happens when Mitchell Robinson comes back and all that? Like, I think the Grizz are probably, because the Grizz now are 4.5 games out of the plan. Okay. They've turned their season around. John Morant, they're 4-0 with him. They're probably at worst going to make the play-in. If they make a run here, they might be able to get up to one of those playoff spots. It's a long uphill battle, but they might be able to go on a streak and get there. And then, that's a great fit with JJJ. It's a great fit with Ja. And their defense, they need a guy who can rebound and protect the rim and set screens and do what Clint Capela does.
Yeah,
that's the best one.
That's a pretty good fit. Did anyone suggest the Warriors to you?
No, but I the way that Trayce Jackson-Davis has been playing recently for the Warriors makes me think that they're not going to acquire a center. I think that it's so funny because I went back and I listened to our post-draft podcast, and my 2 favorite picks and 2 of the favorite picks of all of us that we discussed were Pods and Trayce Jackson-Davis on there. I was like, it's unbelievable that both of those guys are instant contributors. Who could have saw this coming? Yeah. But the way Trayce Jackson-Davis has been playing for them and the way that they have kind of found a stride recently with the young guys playing, I think they'll probably lean more into that and look for. I don't think they would actually be interested in Dejounte or LaVine, but I think if they acquire a player, it would be more of that archetype of player. like a guy who could score.
Man, I mean, I feel like that's leading the wrong way. Just by the way, a quick aside, Draymond fits perfectly into the fucking trade exception.
Oh God, Draymond and Trayvon.
I'm just saying.
Draymond Green Young.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Draymond. That I think that would be very funny. That wouldn't happen in season. I think that'd be a very interesting thing to like circle back to next year, because I think he still fits next year. Maybe unless I'm getting that wrong. But
oh geez, Clint Capela to Memphis, Steven Adams contract to OKC, Zaire Williams, Davis Bertans, and picks to Atlanta. I mean, if Presti wants to go super perverted, and just take on Steven Adams' contract, and then have him play next year. But I think that they're just going to continue to roll with the young guys. Like, I don't think they have interest in that reunion.
Would the Thunder not just want to go snag Capela like for Bertans and like a pick just to like?
I don't think they would play
have a size. I mean, you could think of the fucking rim protection you could have out there with Clint and Chet, and Chet is still going to space for you. You know what I'm saying? Like Chet weak side, Chet in the Rob Williams, like weak side blocking, like that moves me. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think it's crazy to think about them. I don't think it would fuck up their spacing that bad. Like, to be totally honest, like it wouldn't be as good necessarily, but it means you play less Dort and you play more Case and Wallace, which I think is a good thing, to be honest. Like
definitely play less Giddy, which you should be doing anyway. Right. But the one thing I will say about that is that I think that I know they're very committed to this Chet at the 5 thing, and it's actually worked really well for them. They beat another big team in Minnesota last night. They beat the Nuggets earlier in the season. They hung with the Sixers. Like, even against the matchups that are supposed to be the worst matchups in the NBA for that, it's been fine. I do think over the course of a 7-game series, it wouldn't hurt to have one of those guys who has a little bit more size, only due to the fact that you want to keep Chet out of foul trouble, even.
Exactly.
Like if you want to try to, like you said, keep Chet in that Rob Williams role where he could be more of a roamer, he doesn't have to worry about banging in the post. That's an interesting idea. We'll see. They seem so pot committed to fucking having shooting at all times, except for Giddy for some reason on the court, that I would have a hard time seeing them going after either of those guys. But we'll see. Maybe I don't know. If anything, it might just be nice to keep the salary slot, because you're probably going to lose Bertans either after the season if you don't want to pay him, or if you're not ready to make your move. Adams and Capela have like a year and a half left on their deals, I think. So that's where you're like, all right, we get an extra salary to trade this offseason or next year with all these picks, and we can keep our options open. Basically, you're always just keeping the options open there. That would be why I would consider that if I were the Thunder. But I don't know. I think they should make a bigger move. I think they should. This team's so good. Like, I think that it would be a missed opportunity to not try to make like a really big splash. Yeah. But maybe Clint Capela they view that as like, we already have our core guys in place and he's good enough to play 25 minutes in a playoff series. So that's really all we need.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. And it's not like you have so many fucking picks. You know, you're like literally they're going to go to waste. You can't roster all these guys. You know, like so just, you know, throw Atlanta a couple. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have a Kongwu, and like you raise your ceiling for the playoffs. I think it's good. It's good to get your guys deeper in the playoffs earlier, especially when you have a young core. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if it's not going to like break the bank, you know, we're not talking about making a Rudy Gobert trade. You know, it's talking about like 1 or 2 firsts. You already have the Bertans contract. Who fucking cares? You know, you don't even really need to play Capela. You know what I'm saying? Like, you already, as you pointed out, you already play Giddy, who doesn't really shoot. You know what I'm saying? It really doesn't change your team that much. Like,
and Capela is going to do way more traditional center things that basically every team has that is playing in the playoffs.
How about giving Shea a fucking real screener? You know what I'm saying? Honestly, I like a lot of teams. Like, if you want someone to come back, that's why I thought Steven Adams is so good for the Grizzlies is guys like that who can fucking screen and also do moving screens without getting called for it. That's like the number one skill in the NBA, like for a big man. I think that is, not to sound like David Locke, but like it really is like the one of the most important fucking like big things that nobody talks about. Like that's why Bam is so good.
I'm Trill Brodude, and this is Locked On Slop, where we bring you slop every day, hot and fresh.
By the way, all of you piggies are in jail right now that Trill and I did not get nominated for Best Sports Broadcast, and 2 Locked On podcasts got nominated. This is you guys. You need to do better next year. You guys need to do better next year.
So I'm guessing it was Locked On 76ers was the first one with Keep on Pay.
That was definitely the number one. It's the most pro 9/11, most memories of 9/11 in a sports podcast, which exactly. I honestly think we're probably the best Philadelphia-based podcast. That we're not holding down the number 2 9/11 Philadelphia-based pod for that. So.
Yeah. We're rising up the ranks in the 9/11 based Philadelphia podcast.
Sorry. We respect you though. We know you're the king. We would never step on your toes like that.
Of course not. Yeah, respect the god.
Yeah.
The last team that someone suggested for Clint Capela was if they wanted to move AD to the 4 again, and they did Clint Capela and Dejounte. But then I'm like, you're really fucking up your spacing. Like that's like a no-go for me. If you watch that Celtics game on Christmas, the Celtics-Lakers game, it was just from the jump. The Celtics were like, oh, cool. You're going to play 2 non-shooters, basically. Great. We're not going to defend them at all. We'll camp out in the lane, and LeBron and AD will have to create all of their offense inside, and it will create incredibly inefficient offense, and getting another traditional center and a non-3-point shooting guard like Dejounte just makes no sense for me for the Lakers, but they're the Lakers. They do a lot of stupid things all the time. So maybe they would be interested in something like that. I don't know. So next topic of conversation, and this is something that has been brought up a lot over the last few days, which is the Phoenix Suns are,
they're good.
Everything's fine.
They're doing awesome. It's really good. Our boy KD, his legacy is perfectly intact. Everyone loves him, top 12 NBA player. And it's going great.
Yep.
It can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Shout out to Hagberg for bringing back the Devin Booker in a Orlando Magic jersey shops. We're back at that point of the year.
No reason to rewrite history and say that Kevin Durant, you actually can't build a contender around Kevin Durant. That was my favorite tweet. And I was like, yeah, Kevin Durant famously never been the best player on a contender before.
No.
Does the word contender have no meaning anymore? Does contender just mean you have won a championship solely with that guy?
Here's the thing. If you've won multiple finals MVPs, I think that goes out the window. Even
if I give that point away because it was the Steph Warriors and like he had the easiest role of all time, they made it to the finals with the Thunder, and they made it back to the conference finals and almost beat the Warriors. Took them to 7 games. Like they blew a 3-1 lead. Like, was that team not a contender? Did I imagine 2 years ago, the NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks getting taken to 7 games by Kevin Durant with a hobbled James Harden and no Kyrie Irving for most of the series, and putting the team on his back and almost getting them back to the conference finals, which they certainly would have won against the Atlanta Hawks. And then they probably would have won the finals against the Suns. Maybe they don't. But if you make it to the conference finals as the best player or the finals as the best player, and you have another opportunity where you get deep into round 2 against the team that eventually wins the championship, you're a contender. Well, what are we talking about? Like, look, I understand that, maybe historically Kevin Durant is a little bit overrated as a pure number 1A, surefire best player on a championship team. He also played during the Steph Curry and LeBron James era where they dominated championships for like a decade at his peak. So it's hard for me to really say whether you could build a contender around Kevin Durant.
Yeah. If he rose to prominence during the, like, let's say Kobe Bryant era, he would have be a very different story. Let me just say that. Snuck in.
If his peak is probably 5 to 10 years earlier, he almost certainly wins a championship as the best player on a team. Or now it feels like they're rewriting things based on who he currently is as a player, because this is not who he always was as a player. Like, he's 34, 35 years old.
That's the thing that's driving me insane. He's 35, man. He's so old. Like, what are you talking about? Like the fact that you expect this from him, I mean, that's on the Suns. I'm sorry, that's on the Suns that you traded all of that for Kevin Durant. I mean, we said it. We said it's still Kevin Durant, but you also do have to understand that this is a guy who doesn't play a lot of games each year. Like, and you especially you're trying to put him on a team that is not very deep.
I do just want to say, people in the comments, there might have been some people here that were yelling at me at Slotfest who was like, this is a lot. And they were like, it's Kevin Durant, who cares? And then I'm like, they have no other moves to make. And by the way, they did have another move to make, and it is turning out to be the worst move maybe in the history of the NBA if Bradley Beal is never able to get right. And it's not to say that I still think on its face that trade in a vacuum is fine because you weren't getting anything good for Chris Paul anyway. But the reality of the situation was it was always a very big risk because of Bradley Beal's contract and because the fact that he's basically a worse version of Devin Booker. Like he's a good player, but he's also just a slightly, I would say not even slightly, a decently worse version of the best player on your team that isn't the cleanest fit in the world. If he can get healthy and they can kind of fix this thing and figure it out on the fly, sure, maybe they could turn their season around. And look, we've seen teams have bad starts to seasons and figure it out over the course of a season. The vibes are so bad there right now, though. It's not like teams before, like the Sixers had this last year, and the vibes never felt bad. It was just like, we're losing close games, whatever. The Celtics had it a few years ago. They end up making a run to the NBA Finals. But I kind of am at the point where if you're referencing that Celtics team from 2 years ago and it's December, you're probably already cooked. Because I see fans already doing that for the Suns, and it's just a really, really uphill battle in order to turn your season around in that way.
They're not even the best team in the West with the most upside in terms of turning their season around. They're not even the best team in the bottom half of the West that I would pick to surge into the top half of the bottom half of the playoff picture. Like, they're old.
Would you say Grizzlies or Warriors?
I'd say Grizzlies. I think the Grizzlies have the best chance because they also just need to make one move for a big, the Clint Capela move, something like that would be. They would suddenly be cooking, like healthy Marcus Smart. Like they've got a lot. I like the Grizzlies. I like the Grizzlies turning it around here and coming it together. They're gonna fix it. It's fine. The other thing is, like, if KD is sulking on that team, so who's speaking up and say something about that? You've got Brad Beal, who literally cannot play. Has played 2 games all year, 1, something like that. Like, you have it's Booker, who's on Warzone, and I don't know. You can do all the Devin Booker stuff. He's a great player. He's probably got about the same amount of cachet right now in the NBA as Kevin Durant. And then the next guy is Grayson Allen. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all guys who don't have a place in the league. Like, that's a bad team to have bad vibes. Is Frank Vogel their coach?
First-year head coach Frank Vogel, who, by the way, Will pointed this out. Defensive head coach Frank Vogel, by the way.
Yeah. Oh my God. Dude.
And then you immediately were like, okay, we're going to hire Frank Vogel and then trade for Bradley Beal, and put only offensive role players around. They have Grayson Allen, offensive role player. Eric Gordon at this point in his career is now just primarily an offensive role player. they don't have the two-way talent around these guys and part of that is due to the fact that they took on the Bradley Beal contract. They brought in Nurkic and Grayson Allen in that trade, and I don't even really think they miss Ayton all that much, to be completely honest with you. But they made those two moves, and they said, we're going to try to nail the rest with minimums. And when they signed those minimum guys, I was like, I think these are all perfectly fine minimum flyers for what they need. And just to try to find guys who are fourth and fifth guys in lineups to make them gel, make them work. Now they don't have enough shooting and they don't have enough defense. I don't really know how we're in 2023 going into 2024. And we talked about this with the Pistons last week, that like you devalue shooting, and then when you do have shooters, they're only shooters. Like that's all they can possibly do. I don't know how we haven't moved past like this kind of way to build your team, but the reality is they just had no resources to do it. Like they took as many flyers as they possibly could, and the whole big picture thing with this Beal trade is not just that, it's the fact that they went even further into going all in on this team by doing something that at the time me and you both said this is insanely stupid, by trading. So what they did was they did these pick swap trades that we talked about, which I don't think many people are talking about right now, and how bad of a disaster this could be. Do you know what their pick swap for this year is? So they pick swap with the Wizards, which fine, who cares? The Wizards are one of the worst teams in the NBA. That doesn't matter. But then they pick swapped again with the Grizzlies. So they have the worst of those three teams' first round pick this year. So they actually, now that the Grizzlies are catching up to them in the standings, I think they're 3 games back from them in the standings. If the Grizzlies go on a run and they pass the Suns, which seems somewhat likely now, I mean,
yeah, and they're 5 games back now.
No, I think they're in the loss column maybe, but if you look at like how many games back they actually are from the Suns, I think it's 3.5. And so you have they're about to catch them, so they can't tank because they would swap that pick with the Grizzlies, which is currently in the lottery. And they did this 3 different years, dude. So they have this year that they did that, where they get the worst of the 3 picks. They did that another year with Washington. Orlando, 2026. So it's top 13 protected this year. So that part is good at least. But still, they have a pick a few years out in 2026 to the Magic, where they did the same thing, where it's the worst of the Wizards, the Magic, and the Suns for second round picks. And that could end up being a decent pick. Maybe that one's protected as well. But long story short here, they basically acquired all these second round picks and they don't have salaries to trade. That's what I never got about this whole process, about them going out and swapping these swaps to get seconds, and then to turn around and then say, okay, but we can't trade these seconds for players because we only have minimum contracts, and then a bunch of contracts that we either can't move, like Devin Booker or Kevin Durant, and then one that's massive that has a no trade clause on it, like Bradley Beal or Nurkic. Like, there's just no trades they can do that would make them better this season. Like, that, it basically doesn't exist.
So I looked this up on the trade machine. They literally have 5 tradable picks, and they're all second rounders that they got from other teams.
Yep. And in those trades.
Yes, and they all have like weird protections on them. Like the Celtics one is protected 31-45 that they own. And like they have like a 31-54 Spurs second round pick that's like fake.
Yeah, that's not real. You just need some, like you said before, you need something to trade in a trade.
They literally have nothing. There's like literally like 2 second round picks that suck and are like 2026 that are left. So,
and also I do just want to point out that not only are those picks fake, but they, even if they add up a bunch of salary, they have to do it now. Because they're so deep into the tax, they can't even aggregate salary after this season. So if you want to make that move, like a guy that I thought of for them, which does not really fix their problems, but is someone they've been interested in the past, is Jalen McDaniels, who has been a disaster on the Raptors. They could probably trade 2 minimum contracts and a second-round pick for Jalen McDaniels and just take a flyer on him, see if he can fit as a 4th or 5th guy in some lineups, whatever. But still, that has to be done now because they're going to be so deep in the text. They're very likely to not have a lottery pick for the next, other than this year's top 13 protected. But they traded so many unprotected picks and double swaps and all this shit. They're very likely to not have a high draft pick if they don't get one this year until like 2031.
Yeah. No, it's like literally years. And by the way, Bradley Beal is still under contract for 3 more years after this one, at ending at $57 million. It's a player option, but to quote the great Ryan Russillo, I think
he's going to pick that one up. This is like it's insane. And I think all of this comes back to, and everyone was shitting on KD and blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God, I forgot. There's no trade clause too. I forgot about
that. You can't even trade Beal.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He can decline any trade that he doesn't like. That's why people were like, oh, could the Hawks do Dejounte and Clint Capela, or could they do Dejounte and Hunter? And I'm like, no, Beal will just say no because he won't want to go to Atlanta.
So I'm gonna bring up the Q question that I posed in the thing. I actually stole it from Brian from the chat, and I love this question. What's the worst trade? The Suns trading for KD, given that everything that precipitated off of it, or the Wolves trade for Rudy Gobert?
Well, a year ago we were sitting here saying, are they fucked? And I think my conclusion on that was, yeah, they're probably fucked, but the fact that Ant and McDaniels are as good as they are, and the fact that Minnesota has never won anything and they just wanted to compete, that in the long run, who really cares? The Wolves are now the 1 seed and are rising as a team collectively, and all of those picks they gave up seemed like they were going to be a lot worse a year ago than they are right now. So if you're a Suns fan, you can say, well, look, they seem fucked and they figured it out. The downside, if you're the Suns, is this Bradley Beal contract is so big it gives you no flexibility or maneuverability. And the Kevin Durant thing on top of that is that Kevin Durant is 35. Like, Rudy Gobert at the time was 30 or 31, I believe.
Yeah.
And by all means should be a good player for the next 3 or 4 years. I know Kevin Durant, because of his size, his skill, his touch, all that stuff, he should age fairly well, but he does have a lot of injury concerns. And also, all this keeps leading me back to is, you did this when Devin Booker was in the middle of his prime, and I understood why you did it. Mm-hmm. But Anthony Edwards, when they made that trade, was like 21. The reason why I didn't love it was because I thought Ant was too young.
Yes.
You have him for at least 5 more years under contract, and if not longer. And with Devin Booker, like, we're now staring down the barrel of a Devin Booker trade request in the next year or two if this shit doesn't get fixed. And that's why, add on top of the fact that they have virtually 0 picks, the only way that they could restock their cupboard is to trade Devin Booker eventually. And at the time we said it was Karl Anthony Towns for the Wolves, but Devin Booker obviously would have a lot more trade value, but you don't control your own future. And like, this thing can implode very, very quickly.
So, well, and this is what I wanted to go back to, is that, like, we said, I think maybe not last show, but 2 shows ago, where I was talking about, like, I forget what we were talking about. I was like, well, these players don't become available very often. Like, how often do you get a chance to trade for a top 7 guy in the NBA? And it's like, and I said, like, well, but that always happens. Like, there always is a guy that we're not thinking of right now where something gets bad in a hurry. I think I said, like, Luka Doncic, you know what I'm saying, as like an example. But it looks like Devin Booker is gonna be available in the next 2 years. Like, if I would bet money that is gonna be on the table. Like, and he's gonna have, there's gonna be a lot of options, and the Suns are gonna have to try to, like, pivot their front office and try to recoup a lot of these picks. And, like, he's going to end up on like the Thunder or something like that. And that's going to be like funny.
I've heard people say that. I really think it's going to be a team that is, whether it's like the Knicks or the Nets or one of these big market teams, the Heat, whatever. Maybe also like who's Devin Booker friends with around the league that like he might want to team up with, like KD has done so many times. I've seen people say the Thunder, but I don't really think that Booker even is like, Devin Booker's one of the best players in the NBA. I'm not saying you shouldn't try to trade for Devin Booker if he's available, but like with SGA and what they're trying to build, I think that the last guy that they want to fill in that, they probably want more like a wing size, like lower usage guy than a Devin Booker to fill in with that team. But I kind of think if Booker is the next guy to ask out, which look, we were sitting here saying this about Joel Embiid and Giannis 6 months ago.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like and now they both seem fine. Yeah. Like the Bucks got Dame and they're winning a ton of games. The Sixers traded Harden and fixed that and they're winning a ton of games and Maxey looks great and blah, blah, blah. The teams have wriggled themselves out of jams before. And I think that Booker, the only reason why Booker feels like a unique situation, I guess I'll just ask you, what odds would you put on Kevin Durant asking out in the next 6 months? Because that is really where it becomes interesting to me, because Kevin Durant just asked for a trade this calendar year, keep in mind, and was traded in last trade deadline to the Suns. Things have gone to shit. He seems unhappy. Woj is talking about him being unhappy. I don't know if that's from another front office or an agent tried to fuck with him or if it's coming directly from Kevin Durant's kid, but he didn't look very happy during that game on Christmas. And
that was really bad. Like I didn't watch that game, but I saw some of the clips out of context looked really fucking bad to me. Like missing the defensive rotation, like as the game is slipping away and just like not caring, like really bad. I mean, maybe he was tired. I don't know. You probably watched the game and could tell me if it looked like he was playing hard. I don't know, but I don't know. Like, I mean, you should think about it. If you asked me, would I bet on it? I would say, even if Kevin Durant asks out, I don't think they're going to. You know what I'm saying? That's slitting your own throat as a front office. Like, you can't, because you're definitely getting back a lot less than you traded for him. You traded a ton for him. It was one of the bigger trade packages of the NBA, as it should have been. Nobody's giving that up for him again. You know what I'm saying? And nobody's going to do that. So you're taking on like less money. Like, what do you think teams would offer? Because I think that's like really interesting. What
if he asks out today?
If he asks out today, like, what do you think would be like one of the most competitive offers like a team made for Kevin Durant?
The Miami Heat would definitely offer like Hero and a bunch of picks, I think. But also, and
would Hawkins? Do you think they'd offer Hawkins?
Here, I just want to talk about Jaime Hawkins for a second, who is a player I really liked in the draft, is a good, talented player. Young, and look, Miami operates like a small market. Maybe they wouldn't trade him because they're cheap and they don't want to spend money, and he's on a rookie contract and he's a starter level player already, and maybe he makes some all-star teams. I don't know. Like, it's pretty rare that a guy's as good as him as a rookie and doesn't become, at least at some point in his career, become a part of the conversation, even if he's an older rookie.
I was just gonna say, and even if that was like a hospital game on Christmas, scoring 30 points on national TV is pretty impressive. Yeah.
Now look, if you can put up 30 points on the likes of Marcus Morris Sr. and Mo Bamba and the guys that but in all seriousness, regardless, as a rookie to do that is genuinely impressive. And I mean, but we don't talk about that game. I Men in Black that from people's memory because Maxey was absolute doo-doo ass.
Isn't it infuriating that they fucking keep getting away with it? Like your stars are just bad. God, I fucking hate them. I really fucking hate them.
Just a little sidebar about the Heat in general. Maxey has always historically played really well against the Heat because they passed on him in the draft and he takes the matchup personally. But they figured, and he had a really good game against them last year. 2 years ago, he had a breakout game against them. But they present such a unique bad matchup for Maxey when Embiid doesn't play, because They have so many big guys that can switch onto the perimeter, and like Bam could just hang on the perimeter. And they have so many like scrappy point of attack guys that can just like mess with you. Like they put Caleb Martin on him early in the game before he got hurt to like mess with him size wise and stuff. And I love Maxey to death, but the problem with his game and the thing that I worry about deeper into the playoffs is the self-creation against a set defense. And he's done it a few times this year where he's looked amazing. Like the Wolves game, he was awesome against one of the best defenses in the NBA. The Celtics game, he had a really good game. Like he's done it. The Heat present a really unique matchup for him in general because he still needs to figure out what to do with guys who are just super athletic that can move and are big on the perimeter and like can kind of lock him up a little bit. So that will be the next step of his game. And it got into his head. Like, I mean, I think you talked about this during the podcast last year during the playoffs where the Heat play super physical and they want the refs to, they're going to make the refs call foul on every single play. They fouled him probably 5 times and he wasn't getting the calls, and it got in his head because he was like yelling at the refs. He missed multiple free throws, which he missed 3 free throws. He's a 90% free throw shooter on the season. He missed 3 free throws in that game. So I do think that I think one of the reasons why their brand of basketball works so well in the playoffs after watching that game is not only the personnel they have and the coach they have, but also the fact that like you can just foul more in the playoffs and they're so physical that they'll just be like, all right, whatever, we'll let the refs call it. And if the refs aren't going to call it on every play, it's going to get to guys and it's going to wear them down over the course of a series.
Yeah. The untalented Celtics played that way too. And it's always infuriating when you're a fan of the more talented team. Yeah. And there's just these fucking rat mode squads like just get away with this like in the playoffs after a whole regular season of calling it like totally differently. So yeah, I mean that's just classic Miami Heat. But anyway, I mean I think if they would probably trade for Durant, they would hook him up to their HGH machine and
exactly. But the Jaime Jaquez thing, I do just want to bring this up. Yeah. They should be willing to, for a player of Durant's magnitude, put a guy like him on the table, sure. Especially when you consider their age and all of the things I've talked about with Jimmy Butler. It's not really the way they function, though. And then on top of that, I do just want to point out that not even like Durant, at least you could say like he's already asking for another trade from another team. Mm-hmm. He hasn't even played a full year with the Suns. And he's 35 and we got to pay him all this money. And even if he helps raise our championship ceiling, we already made it to the finals twice in the last few years. We don't need Kevin Durant in Miami. When they were interested in Donovan Mitchell, who's younger and would probably put them on his list and would sign a long-term extension there in the middle of his prime and is much better than Tyler Hero. That is where it drives me insane, where Bill and Russillo were like, nah, I wouldn't put Jaquez in the deal. Well, who are you? Who like Jaime Jaquez is a really nice young player, and maybe, like I said, will make some all-star teams at some point.
Yeah.
The odds that he even becomes as good as Donovan Mitchell are low, considering how old he was when he came into the NBA and how hard it is to be an older rookie and make as many all-star teams, all NBA teams as Donovan Mitchell has made. And Donovan Mitchell fixes the exact issue that Miami has deep into the playoffs. That's what drives me so insane when Bill and Russillo are like, oh, I know, I never include Jaquez. Like, what are you talking about?
I love trolling the Lakers because of like the AD trade, because they gave up so fucking much. And like, it was for something that was like at the deadline. But like at the end of the day, like, does it really matter that much they traded like Brandon Ingram and like other shit? Like Brandon Ingram's turned into like a great player, you know what I'm saying? But like
at the end of the day, great, a good player.
A good player. I mean, he
made one all-star team.
He will probably make more. You know what I'm saying? Like he we'll see. He also plays a position of need. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of guys who are small forwards. You know, guys who can cook.
Yeah, like, I said it last night. He's shittier Kevin Durant, which is not an insult because Kevin Durant's one of the greatest players of all time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's so like I you know, and that was a good trade. You know what I'm saying? That's like when people are talking about going out and getting the better player. You know what I'm saying? It's those type of trades where you're getting back a genuine All-NBA guy who has made multiple All-NBA teams, like Donovan Mitchell has. You know, like,
and the difference is in their prime. It's not Kevin Durant, who's
exactly.
35 years old. And like, you took a risk. You knew you were taking a risk when you traded Cam Johnson and Bridges and all these picks and swaps for them. And part of the reason why I was like, I might have just waited, even though I probably would have done it because it's Kevin fucking Durant, was because I was like, this is everything. You've made your final move, basically. And I'm worried about making those trades when there's no way out on the other end. And one of the reasons why I think I might have underestimated what Daryl Morey has done for the Sixers over the last year is because that flexibility does matter when you consider the contracts that you're taking on in these trades. When I was mad that they weren't interested in Bradley Beal, now I get it. Like this is why I don't run a team, and this is why Daryl Morey and the guys that run the Sixers, because they were like, wait, we think Maxey could be better than him. He's younger than him. He's not on the biggest contract in NBA history. And also now Bradley Beal has one back issue, and it's like, is he going to be okay? Like, is he going to be the same guy moving on from now? So that's kind of where, like, I just think the Suns, someone said the other day, we're now at a position where I think it might've been our friend Piss in the comments. Yes, that's his name. If you're listening, Piss. I think he might've tweeted this. It was someone tweeted this. We're now at a point where we have to talk about whose future is more grim between the Clippers and Suns. And I think it's undoubtedly the Suns, unless they can fix this thing in the next 6 months, because you have the Booker ask out factor, but you also have, and yes, of course, the Clippers are in a situation where they have 3 guys that could ask out, but you're still in LA and you still have an owner that is not fake rich like Matt Ishbia. He is literally one of the richest people to ever live in Steve Ballmer, and he will just spend endlessly as much as he possibly can to keep the team good and relevant. Even with some of the trades they've made, some of the things they've done, they're currently better than the Suns right now, even though I didn't really get why they traded for Harden. Kawhi was out again last night, and Harden played great against not a good team, but he's been much better recently. Right now, I would say that they have a better chance to win the Western Conference. And over the next 5 years, I would certainly rather be the team that can get a road to cap space and is in Los Angeles, even if they gave up a bunch of picks.
It's just like they have, like, you go down the roster, they have like more real players. Like Norm Powell's contract is not good, but he's like a real NBA player. Like Russell Westbrook in his bench role is a real NBA player. Like that is genuinely good, like at times. Mason Plumlee, is he out for the season?
He's coming back at some point, but also, like, by the way, Norm Powell, I don't know if you saw this, but Norm Powell is having a career year shooting again because he has a creator like he's shooting like high 40s on high volume from 3.
Like the Clippers still had unbelievable depth even when they were bad. Like they still, even after trading all of their bullshit they traded for James Harden, they still have a lot of guys who can play. Like even deep on the roster, there's guys who are like, they even have young guys like Kobe Brown and like, you know, what's his name? Bones is on the roster.
Yeah. And like, but like, and I think they're always going to be willing to take, because they have deeper pockets than everyone else. They're always going to be willing to take on bigger contracts, even if teams don't want them. And they're going to be willing to take flyers like they did on Bones, who, look, maybe Bones, I still believe that there's an NBA player somewhere in Bones. Like, I just think he's too talented to not have some kind of career. But even if that doesn't work out, it was such a low risk flyer that those are the kind of moves that they're constantly making to refresh the team, keep the cupboard stacked, so that when guys go down or whatever, like you said, like I think they still probably have 11 NBA players on their roster. The Suns have like 4.5 for the second straight season. Like it's really hard to make those things work if you're not willing to spend so much on these kind of role player style contracts. And Terrence Mann, by the way, having by far the worst year of his career. And I don't expect him to be as bad as he has been to this point since they've traded for Harden. He's shooting like 17% from 3 or something terrible. Yeah, he's been real bad. I don't expect him to be that bad. And if he is, I don't know, maybe they trade him for another guy that's on a longer term contract like they did a few years ago when they traded for Robert Covington and Norm Powell.
They also, I just forgot. So this is a perfectly good example of the other reason they're not fucked. They got like Daniel Tice for fucking nothing, who's like not, obviously overmatched, just a starter in the fucking Eastern Conference Finals, but like as a
rotation big.
As a rotation big is awesome, and that's the difference to me. Is like, the Clippers, even if like their guys like walk away, they still have these rotation pieces and this other stuff. Like I can feel myself getting pulled back in where I keep saying like, well, anyone can kind of win the West. And I keep like looking at the Clippers, like they're talking to me like the Green Goblin mask. Like, well, if Kawhi is healthy, if Kawhi's healthy.
He's missed 3 games after starting all of the first like 24.
It is like, they really didn't give up that much for James Harden. You know what I'm saying?
Batum's the only good player they gave up. Like,
yeah,
I mean, Covington's like is barely in a rotation, and Sixers fans, they're mostly trolling me at this point. I think where they're like, "Oh, Mook is him," and then I'm like, "You guys don't." He's shooting 50% from 3, and he's at best a neutral because he can't move on defense. Yeah. And he was absolutely terrible in the games without Embiid.
I gotta say, it was like very, as a Celtics fan, it was like very uncanny to see like Spike Eskin tweeting about like Flask Dad, and it's like I just had like Vietnam flashbacks to like 2017 when we're all just like happy and like enjoying. Riffsman is posting all this awesome shit. It's like before the war. Like it was like pictures of that picture of World War II vet, like where he's like happy and like before the war.
That's a perfect comp because I said the other day that the 2021 season is the season that Celtics fans talk about like it was a war because it was the only season that Jason Tatum didn't have 3 or 4 other starters on the team that were all-star level. Remember when we went 500? Oh my God, the horror. We were in the play-in.
It was awful. Pistons fans can't imagine what it's like to have your hopes up and have them dashed like this.
Perfect transition.
No Pistons fans would trade with us for the horrible things that are going on.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Mook is currently shooting 48.9% from the field, 50% from 3, 100% from the line, and is like one of the worst defenders in the NBA. And the second that his shot comes back down to like 40% from 3, he's going to be a negative. I mean, they're trading him at the deadline, so I don't really care. But the fact is, the Clippers, what the Clippers gave up, Batum, a first round pick on the court this season, they really just swapped Harden for Batum because Covington didn't play for him that much. Morris was out of their rotation, and now I see. I feel like it's funny. I feel like with the Harden thing, and it is the regular season, so like I'm not going to over-index him having an insane game against the Hornets like he does every single year. But he's looked, just from the eye test, I think he's looked a lot burstier, a lot like he's trying harder on defense. He's moving the ball more on offense. He's shooting off the catch more on offense. Like I think they've gotten the idealized version of James Harden that I would have hoped for if he had stayed on the Sixers this season in Nick Nurse's system. So it's worked out for them so far. And I mean, you always have the playoffs. Maybe the Harden skeptics get the last laugh, but it's definitely hit a higher end outcome than I had expected.
Same. I didn't like the trade for the Clippers, and it seems like, even for this season, honestly, like Harden could kind of shit himself in the playoffs, and if like he can just buoy them to like if they can get to like a top 4 seed, I feel a lot better about them the West. Yeah. Like, I feel a lot better. That's worth the first round pick, even if it ends up being absurdly high. You know what I'm saying? Like, who fucking cares at this point? You're already sunk cost fallacy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're already in this deep. Like, why not?
Yeah. So between that and
I realize that's the opposite of what the sunk cost fallacy is. But
I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. Yeah. I was going to say, between that and the Cade Cunningham renaissance in Detroit right now, I'm starting to feel like Danny DeVito and It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
When he sees the light and he starts to get it.
Yeah.
Last night was the first game I watched Cade Cunningham, and I'm going to be honest. I've been rooting for the Pistons for like 2 weeks. I did not want them to break this single game losing streak record because it's just so brutal. But if I were a Pistons fan, coming out of last night, I wouldn't give a fuck about the streak at all. Because that was what you've always wanted from Cade Cunningham. Like, I know that he had a good game against the Hawks last week. I'm to the point where I think Hawks games and Pacers games this season, the stats almost shouldn't count because those defenses are so bad.
Exhibition games, yeah, there should be like in-season tournament games where they get scrubbed from like they don't count for like points or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, all right, cool. He did it against the Hawks, great.
Yeah.
The Nets, I know the Nets don't have a great defense this year. They have good defensive personnel.
Yeah.
And he was cooking whatever they did. They were putting 2 on the ball. He was figuring it out. He was cooking guys in isolation. He was getting to the rim, getting to the line. I feel like ball don't stop right now. But in the first half, it was once again kind of Cade's kind of floating in and out of the game. And when they needed him to be the dude, he put the team on his back and he carried them. And I think that some of the Cade people that have been telling me and yelling at me about this might have been right in that giving him a little bit more spacing, giving him a less responsibility throughout the course of a game where you can move him off the ball a little bit more, get him into better, more favorable spots. It's worked. Like his efficiency's way up recently. And just by the eye test, he's looked like a completely different player. And part of the reason why, even though the losing streak fucking sucks, coming out of last night, if they just turn Wiseman, Kevin Knox, and like one of those other shitty rotation spots that they're playing right now into real NBA players, they're not going to be historically bad.
Slop. Ben already put it in the chat, but Herb Cole died.
Who?
So the owner, Milwaukee Bucks owner, Herb Cole died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I didn't even know who that man was, but
he was a U.S. senator. I think he sold it. He's the guy who like owned the team before the.
Oh, okay. He just sold it recently.
Yeah, he sold it to Lazary and Edens or whatever. Who is it there? Edens and the other guy. I forget the other guy. So he's credited for keeping the Bucks in
Milwaukee.
So
R.I.P. to the big homie.
Oh yeah, R.I.P. to guy who had a Grinch moment and his heart grew 2 sizes one day, and he kept Milwaukee basketball in there. So no tech. He gave us no tech Ben's posts.
Let's go. I'm so grateful for that guy. He owned the team when they drafted Giannis. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah, huge. So but back to the Cade thing. I'd also like to point out that this was the first game in a while he had Jalen Duren.
Yes, Jalen Duren was back in the lineup.
He was back. That's probably not a coincidence that he's suddenly looking good when there's another good player to do something on the court.
Sure.
With some of the stuff, so. I mean, we've always said we've never been anti-Cade. It's just like everyone's got to chill out. You know what I'm saying? When
the guy tweeted last night that he would be an MVP candidate, I was like, yeah, we just can't ever be normal about.
Yeah, you just can't be normal about Cade. Like,
can't be normal.
Maybe his destiny is to become like loser Jason Tatum. Which I mean, like in like a nice way, you know what I'm saying? Like where he's like the exact opposite of Jason Tatum, where he's like
drafted in the worst possible situation,
and he's like pretty good and like turns it on, and these like he's a loss merchant, you know what I'm saying? Reputation. Yeah. What's the opposite of a merchant? He's a loss,
purchaser.
There we go. Loss purchaser.
Buyer.
Where everyone's just got like, because they lose so much, Cade just has he's punished Jason Tatum. He's like Jason Tatum's Mr. Glass, from fucking Unbreakable, where he received all the bad luck for all the good luck that Jason Tatum had. So, oh man, it's gonna be awesome.
I mean, I think that some of the things that were said could turn out to be true. The shooting has been the thing for me that I've always been waiting for with him.
Yeah.
I was always told he was a good shooter. Last night and the past few games has really been the first time that I've seen him be able to not only create his own offense and separation, but actually hits the shots. And that was something that I felt like, look, the form looks fine. The only thing that I've said, the reason why I was skeptical last week when we recorded, we talked about could he become a Chris Middleton type, whereas I was like, Chris Middleton is like an incredible tough shot maker, and I never saw that with Cade.
Yeah.
And last night was him creating his own offense, hitting tough shots, making the right plays, and even if it didn't result in a win, it does feel absurd that like every team, I don't know did you catch this, but the Nets played all of their guys like playoff minutes so they didn't lose that game. Like everyone's like the Pistons are playing every game like it's game 7, but also their opponents are playing every game like it's game 7 because they don't want to be the team that has the record broken.
We need more of this shit. They need to be more gimmicks in the NBA.
Yes.
Is what I'm understanding to like get through like
that in-season tournament.
If we're gonna have all these stupid games, they should put the fucking championship belt out there. Where like one team has the belt and you like defend the belt, you know, and then if a team beats you, you hand off the belt. Like someone used to keep track of that, like online. Like that was awesome. Like
the Wolves, like they beat the Celtics and then they take the championship belt, and then the Sixers beat them and then they take it. Like that would actually be a funny gimmick, because I do think that especially the players that are into wrestling would absolutely love that. But
that's what I'm saying. Like that would be fun. They honestly should just lean into like stupid bullshit like that, because the regular season is already Mickey Mouse. It's already bad. Like I've been on record saying right now, the NBA right now, besides the Grizzlies maybe because they just got Ja Morant back, it's gonna be the same shit in 60 games. I'm sorry. Like there's gonna be like 2 things different, and one of them is gonna be that the Grizzlies are gonna be better.
I think by this point of the season, it's like I think someone said it on a podcast the other day, when you hit the 30 game mark, it's like the standings pretty much don't change much from that point on. Not a lot changes from that point on, outside of like injuries and guys coming back and stuff like that. But I just want to say, the last 4 games, Cade Cunningham has played 44 minutes, 39 minutes, 33 minutes, 37 minutes.
Oh, no.
And as the D-Bronx, the Nets fan in the comments, points out that if you watch the game last night, they came out like it was game 7 of the finals. And then the Nets kind of had to readjust their energy and their minutes. And now the Bucks are actually benefiting from this, because the Bucks play the Nets on the second half of a back-to-back tonight, and they're sitting like 3 of their guys because they played so many minutes last night against the Pistons.
That's classic Bucks, by the way, to like inherit that. What a fucking
fortuitous.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. But yeah, it's incredible that that this is happening. But I just from the Pistons, the last thing on the Pistons here is that I do just want to point out that they're interested in some guys at this deadline. And I said it before and I say it again. I think it would be a massive, massive mistake for them to make real win now moves in this season, because you have 2 wins and like giving up on a prospect, or like all the trades that you could make at this deadline are either going to be available. And actually, let me read you the list of players they're interested in that Sham said.
Oh my God, dude. I saw Tobias, which, by the way, congratulations.
There's a team wants Tobias. I've been saying, I was like, people are like, teams would want Tobias. And I'm like, well, a team might want Tobias. And that's really all you need is one team to be interested.
Right.
But the list of players was OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Tobias Harris, and Miles Bridges, which obviously gross on that last one. But the other players that they're talking about here, every one of these players is going to be a free agent this summer. And if they want to go to Detroit because you're willing to pay them way more than any other team, just wait until the offseason. Like, you can figure out a sign and trade, and if you can't get to the right amount of cap space, and I'm pretty sure they can create a ton of cap space again this summer anyway, because all their guys are still on rookie contracts. I look at it like you should be waiting until the offseason to do any of these moves. And I've had a few people ask me about the Tobias thing. I'm going to be honest. Everyone knows I've been saying trade Tobias all season. I don't want him on the Sixers. He's been a little bit better recently, but that's also Joel Embiid didn't play. I don't really care about that game. And then the game before, awesome. He had a good shooting game. Cool. It doesn't matter to me. I know he's not going to be able to shoot deep into the playoffs. I don't think there's anyone on the Pistons that I would trade for in general. If I were a team that wanted to make a run into the playoffs, I think Burks has looked not good this season. He was the one guy that I was like, maybe. I think Bojan is cooked, dude. His defense is so bad. If you watch that Nets game last night and you think Bojan can play deep into the playoffs, you just don't know ball, because he was getting targeted and isolated on every possession on the other. The Nets were just taking turns over and over and over again. His defense is just, it's done, dude. Like, he can't stay in front of anyone right now. I don't really care about the shooting and scoring. If you can't stay in front of anyone in the playoffs, especially if you want to win a Bucks series or a Celtics series or a Heat series, best of luck playing Bojan Bogdanovic in your rotation. I don't think he can play at all.
No.
And then you're talking about guys like, we know Joe Harris is cooked. Monte Morris hasn't played all season. Like, there's no veteran players on that team that you should be like, they can play for my team in the playoffs. Because they haven't played the whole season, but there's a reason why the Pistons have 2 wins right now. And I just think that it would be a massive mistake for them to make moves to try to win right now when you're not going to win.
If they made any trade where my average age goes up, if they made any trade like that, I would install like a Home Alone, like booby trap on like Troy Weaver's phone. Like the paint cans that like hit Joe Pesci in the head, like would swing down and like and knock him on the head if he tried to like do anything like that. Like, because the other thing is you paid Monty Williams like how much? $20 million a year?
What 12 million. It's the most of any coach ever, I believe.
So you can't fire him. You extended Troy Weaver last season. Like, he's also can't really get fired. So like, you're just kind of running out the clock on this like brain trust right now. And the problem is that means that brain trust is going to be presiding over who gets extended and like what gets done with your draft picks here in the like upcoming thing. So there is just, it's really bad, man. I don't know. It's bleak. I mean, they do have like talent and they have young guys who could like come into their own and everything like that. But I feel like this is going to get ruined as it goes along. Like, I think right now, if the Pistons didn't do anything, I think there's still hope for this team eventually being good. If you like make the right moves around the edges, like you do have Jalen Duren, you do have Cade Cunningham, you do have Asar Thompson. I think all of these guys are good-ish players. You know,
Ivy didn't have a good shooting game last night, but he played well. Like I don't think that they have no talent. It's really hard in the modern NBA when all of your older guys have deficiencies on one end of the court. You're playing James Wiseman and Kevin Knox real minutes, and then all of your best players are 21 and 22.
Yeah, and it's just but I also just think Troy Weaver is going to do something else awful like between now
and let him do it. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, he's gonna try to trade Jaden Ivey for Jalen Green. Like, don't let him do that. Like,
because he liked him in the draft 2.5 years ago, despite the fact that he's done nothing in the NBA. Like, it just be patient. Don't make any panic moves.
Yeah,
you could take flyers on guys, fine. Like, if there are contracts that need to be moved from other teams that are trying to like duck the tax, and you just want to add a competent role player to your team, especially if it's expiring one, sure. If the Sixers are engaging in any sort of trade with the Pistons, from the Sixers perspective, I only want to do that if there's a third team involved, or if they really are dumb enough to be like, yeah, we'll give you IV and a first round pick in 2028 because they can't trade any first in 24, 25, 26, or 27. But if they were dumb enough to be like, we'll give you IV and a first, I would definitely consider it just to flip it to another team and get back better role players. But like, I'm not taking anyone from the Pistons right now. I actually think if you put Tobias Harris, who has driven me insane, and I want the Sixers to trade, if you put Tobias Harris on the Pistons right now, he would be battling with Cade Cunningham for the best player currently. and maybe Jalen Duren when he's healthy, sure, but like that's how bleak their situation is right now. That like a guy that's the 5th best player on the Sixers, the 6th best player on the Sixers, would be not considered one of the best players on their team currently. Obviously, you'd probably still give the nod to one of the younger guys, but still, it's just like I said, it's a bleak situation, and like I'm trying not to like just replace Wiseman and Kevin Knox in the rotation. Try to take low risk moves for the rest of this season, readdress it in the offseason, see what you can do in the draft, see what you can do with trades, and figure it out later.
Can I say something? I really don't think this situation is that bleak if you get rid of Troy Weaver or like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the problem. The problem is not, this is not unsalvageable as is right now. Like it hasn't been good. Like you blew the Killian Hayes pick. That was actually a fine pick. I actually really liked that pick on draft night, getting Killian Hayes at 7. Like you haven't done too much that's like really dumb. You know what I'm saying? Like you could have gotten more for the Jeremy Grant trade. Like
it's just the Wiseman and the obsession with the second draft guys that has really been his downfall.
And it's not even like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you really losing there? Like, you might have cost your guys some development, you know what I'm saying? But you can fix this, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not as bleak as the fucking Suns or some of these other teams. Like, you know,
the Suns still have Devin Booker. Like,
for now, I don't know. That's pretty bad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, there was a tweet from 2021 that was, would you rather be in the Pistons situation or the Bucks situation?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. I felt bad for that guy because everyone was piling on him, and then I was like, this guy's already lost the argument.
Yeah, it's
pretty. The Bucks won the title like 4 months after this tweet.
Yeah,
I don't think that argument has a ton of relevancy in 2024.
No, and by the way, he might have been cooking. Look, talk after this year. Let's talk soon. You know, like let's see.
Yeah, as I said,
to give that up.
Championships, there's no honor in winning championships. There's only honor in rooting for a team that loses 27 straight games and not giving up.
That's true. Yeah. Unironically, as I say, all the Pistons fans have been purified by the sanctity of losing. You know what I'm saying? Like
exactly.
Nothing makes your fan base better than like losing a lot of games. Trust me, the Patriots fans are the worst fan base in professional sports, and we're watching them like die off like mosquitoes in winter. It's awesome. Like you need bad seasons to get rid of your teams, and the Pistons have been bad for 20 years, so it's fine.
It's the same thing as the Patriots being bad.
Yeah, for one season, they're identical, 1-1. Sorry.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
So you guys said I wouldn't do it. You guys said, Sam, where's the Low Post Christmas special? Nobody signed up for the Patreon, so you guys better get on it.
Unbelievable.
It's finished. I'm waiting. You guys might be thinking, you know, Sam, probably because he lost power and like literally couldn't work on it for 2 weeks. That's why we don't have it. No. It's done. I just, you know, I can't give it to you guys until we see those numbers come up. I wanted to release it on time, honestly, but
thank you. I appreciate it. Honestly. Yeah. You now have the mandate of heaven.
It's I'm definitely not still working on it. I definitely didn't have to travel for Christmas. It's done, you know, so just. So
also, tell people you definitely didn't lose your power for 4 days.
Yeah, for 5 days. I definitely didn't. My power didn't go out while I was working on it, and I didn't lose 3 days of work. That didn't happen.
Oh fuck!
So I don't have to re-record Noah Kahan parody song. I spent 3 days.
Let's go. No. So sign up for
the Patreon, or you won't get it.
Yes,
you won't get it. The Christmas special in February, folks. Where
a New Year's Christmas special.
New Year's Christmas special.
Casey says.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. We will we'll be back soon, but enjoy your holiday break if you have one, and if not, Happy New Year, because we'll see you next week.
And it's slop season will be on. Official slop season.
Let's get it.